A small request before starting the video. If you love the channel's topic, then subscribe to the channel now and press the bell icon next to it. Because one of your subscriptions encourages me to make better videos. Y&R the Restless spoilers. June 8th, Victor decides Matt Clark's fate. Victor makes a life-changing decision about Matt Clark while Lily catches Kane off guard. Plus, Malcolm returns to Genoa City. Photo credit, JPI Studios. The Y&R and the Restless spoilers for Monday, June 8th, reveal that Victor must make a decision that could change multiple lives. With Matt Clark's memories restored and his remorse seemingly genuine, Victor finds himself in the position of deciding what comes next. Meanwhile, Lily catches Kane off guard, and Malcolm's long-awaited return brings him back to the people who need him most. Victor decides Matt Clark's future. Victor, Eric Braeden, has never been known for handing out second chances, especially when his family has been hurt. That's what makes his decision regarding Matt Clark, Roger Howarth, so compelling. Ever since Matt Clark regained his memories, he has been consumed by guilt over the damage he caused. Rather than trying to justify his actions, he has openly questioned whether he deserves forgiveness at all. Victor has witnessed that transformation firsthand, but remorse doesn't erase the pain Matt Clark inflicted on the people Victor loves. As Victor weighs his options, he must decide whether Matt Clark deserves punishment, redemption, or something in between. Whatever conclusion he reaches will have consequences for Nick, Joshua Morrow, Sharon Case, Noah, Lucas Adams, and everyone else whose lives were forever changed by Matt Clark's actions. Lily surprises Kane. Elsewhere, Lily, Crystal Khalil, takes Kane, Billy Flynn, by surprise with an offer he likely never expected to receive. The former couple has spent months navigating complicated emotions, lingering resentment, and the possibility that their story may not be completely finished. While both have changed since their relationship ended, recent events have forced them back into each other's orbit. Lily's offer suggests that she may be willing to take a step she previously wouldn't have considered. Whether it's personal, professional, or something that blurs the line between the two, Kane is likely to be caught off guard by what she has in mind. Malcolm returns to Genoa City. Malcolm, Shamar Moore, finally returns home to Genoa City after spending time away focusing on his recovery. His arrival comes at a pivotal moment for the Winters family, which has been dealing with shifting relationships, difficult decisions, and growing tensions. Malcolm's presence could provide support and perspective as his loved ones continue facing challenges of their own. Beyond the family reunions, Malcolm's return also opens the door to unfinished business and new opportunities. Especially with his newfound son, Holden, Nathan Owens. Y&R and the Restless spoilers. June 8th, Victor decides Matt Clark's fate. The moment Genoa City has been quietly bracing for is finally here, and it comes with a chilling weight that hangs over every corner of the Newman empire. Victor Newman is back in full control mode, and this time, the target of his attention is not just another business rival or family inconvenience, but a ghost from the past that refuses to stay buried. Matt Clark's name resurfaces like a wound that never fully healed, and Victor's reaction is not hesitation, not negotiation, but a cold, calculated decision that could reshape the moral balance of everyone involved. For weeks, subtle clues have been building toward this confrontation. Whispered conversations between Newman insiders, uneasy glances from those who know Victor's history, and the increasing pressure surrounding unresolved scandals all point toward one truth: Victor Newman believes that some threats are not meant to be managed, they are meant to be eliminated. And in his mind, Matt Clark falls squarely into that category. What makes this storyline so explosive is not just Matt Clark's return or influence, but what he represents. For Victor, Matt is more than an enemy. He is a reminder of old betrayals, buried secrets, and moments where control slipped through his fingers. And Victor Newman has never tolerated reminders that he is not always in command. Inside Newman Enterprises, the atmosphere shifts dramatically as Victor begins isolating himself in strategy sessions that feel less like business meetings and more like war councils. Even his most trusted advisors notice a change. There is no patience for debate, no interest in compromise, only a singular focus on resolving what he sees as a growing threat. When Victor finally utters Matt Clark's name aloud in a private meeting, the tone is enough to silence everyone in the room. It is not curiosity. It is judgment. At the same time, Nikki Newman senses the storm forming long before anyone else dares to acknowledge it. She knows Victor's patterns better than anyone. When he becomes quiet, when he stops explaining his decisions, when his focus narrows to a single point, it usually means he has already decided the outcome and is simply preparing the world to accept it. Nikki tries to intervene, attempting to remind him of the cost of revisiting old vendettas, but Victor is already too far gone into his mindset of control and consequence. The real tension escalates when evidence tied to Matt Clark begins surfacing in unexpected places. Financial irregularities, old alliances, and connections that were thought to be buried resurface in a way that suggests someone has been deliberately stirring the past. Whether Matt is actively orchestrating his return or being used as a pawn by a larger unseen force remains unclear, but for Victor, ambiguity is not a reason for caution. It is a reason for action. Meanwhile, Nick Newman finds himself drawn into the situation in a deeply personal way. Unlike Victor, Nick's approach is rooted in emotional memory rather than strategy. Matt Clark is not just a threat in Nick's eyes, but a traumatic echo of past danger that once disrupted his life in irreversible ways. As Victor moves toward decisive action, Nick struggles with the fear that history is repeating itself, only this time the consequences could be even more severe. What makes Victor's decision so compelling is the moral complexity surrounding it. He does not frame his intentions in terms of revenge. Instead, he frames them as protection. Protection for his family, for his legacy, and for the city that threats. In Victor's mind, indecision is what allows enemies like Matt Clark to resurface. Finality is what restores order. But not everyone agrees with that philosophy. Victoria Newman becomes increasingly alarmed as she observes her father's growing fixation. She understands the instincts that drive him, but she also recognizes the danger of allowing those instincts to go unchecked. Victoria fears that Victor is not just preparing to confront a problem, but to permanently erase it in a way that could have long-term consequences for the entire Newman name. Behind the scenes, tensions within the Newman family begin to fracture as differing opinions emerge about how far is too far. Some believe Victor is simply doing what he has always done, protecting his empire with ruthless efficiency. Others begin to question whether this time, he may be crossing a line that cannot be undone. As the pressure builds, Victor arranges a private meeting that sends shockwaves through his closest circle. The details are not fully disclosed, but those who are present leave with shaken expressions and very few words. What is clear is that Victor has made a decision regarding Matt Clark's fate, and it is not one that invites discussion or debate. It is final in his mind, even if the execution of that decision is still unfolding. At the same time, an undercurrent of paranoia begins spreading through Genoa City. If Matt Clark truly is active again, then the question becomes who else is connected to his return. Old enemies rarely reappear alone. They come with networks, leverage, and unfinished business. This possibility forces several characters to reassess their alliances and question who can truly be trusted. Sharon Newman, whose history with past trauma tied to Matt Clark has never fully faded, finds herself pulled into the emotional aftermath even before the situation fully escalates. The resurfacing of this name brings back memories she has worked hard to suppress, and she becomes one of the few voices urging caution in a situation that is rapidly spiraling toward irreversible action. But Victor Newman is not a man easily swayed once his mind is set. The most dangerous version of Victor is not the loud, aggressive tycoon making public threats. It is the silent strategist who has already mapped out every possible outcome and believes he alone understands what must be done. And in this case, his belief is absolute. The turning point arrives when Victor gathers all relevant intelligence and draws a conclusion that shocks even those closest to him. Whether Matt Clark is actively plotting against the Newman family or simply positioned as a symbolic threat, Victor determines that leaving him unchecked is no longer an option. In a move that sends ripples through both his family and his enemies, Victor declares that Matt Clark's fate will be decided not by chance, not by law, but by him. This declaration does not necessarily imply immediate action, but it signals something far more important: the point of no return has been crossed. From this moment forward, every interaction, every move, and every silence becomes part of a larger unfolding strategy that no one outside Victor's inner circle fully understands. What makes this storyline particularly gripping is the psychological divide it creates within the Newman family. On one side stands Victor, who sees himself as the guardian of order. On the other stand those who fear that his version of order increasingly resembles personal judgment without restraint. This tension threatens to reshape relationships that have already been strained by years of loyalty, betrayal, and survival. Elsewhere in Genoa City, whispers begin circulating among those who sense that something major is about to happen. Business rivals take note of Victor's unusual focus. Former allies begin quietly distancing themselves, unsure whether they are witnessing a strategic move or the beginning of a personal crusade. Even those who do not fully understand the history of Matt Clark can feel the shift in energy, as though the city itself is holding its breath. As the episode unfolds, Victor is shown alone in moments of reflection that reveal the depth of his conviction. This is not impulsive rage. It is calculated resolve built on decades of experience in dealing with threats that refuse to stay buried. In his mind, hesitation has always been the true enemy. And this time, he refuses to hesitate. Yet, even within his certainty, there is a subtle undertone that suggests awareness of the stakes. Every major decision Victor Newman makes carries consequences that extend beyond the immediate target. Families, alliances, and entire power structures can be altered by a single choice. And this decision regarding Matt Clark may be one of the most consequential he has made in years. As the narrative builds toward its climax, viewers are left with a lingering question: is Victor truly eliminating a threat, or is he resurrecting an old cycle of violence and control that never fully ended? The ambiguity is what makes the storyline so gripping. It exists in the gray space between justice and obsession, protection and domination. By the end of the unfolding events, one truth becomes clear. Victor Newman has made his decision, and Matt Clark's fate is no longer a matter of speculation. It is a matter of execution. Whether this leads to stability or chaos remains uncertain, but in Genoa City, certainty has never been part of the equation for long. And as the screen fades on this chapter, the ripple effect begins immediately. Every character connected to Victor, every ally who stood nearby, and every enemy who thought they understood the Newman playbook is forced to recalibrate. Because when Victor Newman decides a fate, it is never just one life that changes. It is an entire world shifting beneath it. The aftermath of Victor Newman's decision regarding Matt Clark does not settle Genoa City, it tightens it. The air feels heavier, as if everyone understands that something irreversible has already been set in motion, even if the final moment has not yet played out on screen. What Victor has done is not simply issue an order or make a threat. He has created a point of no return that now pulls every storyline around him into its gravity. Inside the Newman household, silence replaces conversation. Nikki Newman is the first to fully grasp the emotional weight of what is happening. She has seen Victor in this state before, but something about this time feels more contained, more deliberate, and therefore more dangerous. There is no explosive anger to interrupt or redirect. There is only conviction. And conviction, when it comes from Victor, is what usually leads to outcomes that cannot be undone. Nikki attempts once again to reach him, not through confrontation but through history. She reminds him of the cost of old wars that never truly ended, of the emotional wreckage that follows decisions made in isolation. But Victor's response is measured and final. He does not argue. He simply reinforces that this is not about the past, it is about preventing the past from repeating itself in a new form. In his mind, hesitation is the only mistake he refuses to make again. At Newman Enterprises, the ripple effect becomes more visible. Executives notice shifts in Victor's scheduling, sudden cancellations, and an unusual level of secrecy surrounding his communications. Even longtime staff begin to realize that certain conversations are no longer being held in the open. Everything now runs through a smaller, tighter channel of trust. The company itself begins to reflect Victor's mindset, streamlined, guarded, and quietly preparing for impact. Victoria Newman finds herself increasingly torn. She understands the logic behind protecting the family legacy, but she cannot ignore the emotional escalation she sees in her father. Victor is not just managing a threat, he is personalizing it in a way that makes every decision heavier than business alone would justify. Victoria begins to worry that once Victor commits fully to this path, there may be no version of events where he steps back cleanly. Nick Newman, meanwhile, becomes the emotional counterweight to Victor's control. Where Victor sees strategy, Nick sees trauma resurfacing. Matt Clark's return is not theoretical for him, it is deeply personal, tied to fear, anger, and unresolved history. Nick's instinct is not to plan but to stop the cycle before it escalates further. This difference creates tension between father and son that is less about disagreement and more about fundamentally opposing worldviews. Elsewhere in Genoa City, Sharon Newman experiences the psychological aftershocks of Matt Clark's re-emergence in a different way. For her, the name alone carries emotional weight that disrupts stability. She begins to feel a creeping sense that the past is not just returning, it is being reopened deliberately. Sharon becomes one of the few voices advocating restraint, warning that actions taken in fear or certainty often create consequences that outlast the original threat. But Victor's plan is already in motion, and it becomes clear that he is operating several steps ahead of everyone else. What others perceive as escalation, Victor sees as containment. He is not reacting to Matt Clark, he is positioning him within a controlled outcome. This distinction is what separates Victor's mindset from everyone else's, and also what isolates him further from their concerns. As days progress, subtle developments suggest that Matt Clark may also be aware of the shifting landscape. There are signs, small but intentional, that indicate he is not simply a passive figure being hunted by Victor's strategy. Whether he is actively countering Victor or simply exploiting the fear surrounding his name remains unclear. But the sense of a chess match forming between unseen players begins to take hold. Victor, however, does not show signs of uncertainty. Instead, his focus narrows even further. He begins revisiting old alliances, calling in favors that have not been used in years, and reinforcing silent agreements that exist outside of formal business structures. These actions suggest preparation for a scenario that extends beyond corporate rivalry and into something far more personal and final. Within the Newman family, fractures deepen quietly. Victoria and Nick struggle not only with Victor's decision, but with the realization that they may not be able to influence its outcome. Nikki is caught in the middle, emotionally anchored to Victor but increasingly aware that his sense of control is becoming absolute. The family dynamic shifts from discussion to observation, they are no longer participants in Victor's decision. They are witnesses to it. A key turning point arrives when Victor receives new intelligence that reframes the situation once again. The details are not fully revealed, but it becomes clear that whatever Matt Clark represents, it is larger than a single return or personal vendetta. There are hints of broader implications, connections that extend beyond Genoa City, and motivations that suggest this is not a spontaneous resurfacing but part of a longer, more calculated design. This revelation does not deter Victor. Instead, it strengthens his resolve. In his mind, complexity does not equal caution. It equals justification. The more intricate the threat, the more necessary decisive action becomes. And so, rather than reconsidering, Victor doubles down on his direction. Meanwhile, tension outside the Newman orbit begins to rise as other characters in Genoa City sense instability forming around one of the city's most powerful families. Business partners reassess agreements. Rivals prepare contingency plans. Even those with no direct connection to Matt Clark begin to feel the impact of Victor's shifting focus, as if the entire ecosystem is adjusting in anticipation of a major disruption. Sharon finds herself drawn deeper into the emotional undertow, realizing that silence is no longer an option. She reaches out cautiously, trying to gauge what is truly happening beneath the surface. But responses are limited, vague, or deliberately withheld. It becomes increasingly clear that information is being controlled as tightly as action. Nick takes a more direct approach, attempting to confront Victor again, but the encounter does not unfold as expected. Instead of confrontation, there is restraint, on Victor's side. He does not escalate. He does not reveal more than he intends. He simply reinforces that the matter is already handled. That statement alone is enough to unsettle Nick far more than any argument would have. Because what it confirms is not just Victor's intent, but his confidence that the outcome is already determined. As the storyline builds toward its next phase, the emotional divide within the Newman family becomes sharper. Victor stands in a space of absolute certainty. Nikki stands in concern. Victoria stands in cautious resistance. Nick stands in emotional opposition. And around them, Genoa City begins to shift, sensing that whatever comes next will not remain contained within one family for long. The final moments of this unfolding chapter leave viewers with a growing sense of inevitability. Matt Clark's fate is no longer just a question of what will happen, but how many lives will be altered in the process. Victor Newman has chosen his path, and whether it brings control or collapse, one thing is already clear: nothing about Genoa City will remain unchanged when it is complete.